Welcome back into the Rounding Third podcast. I'm Nick, and we have Harrison and Sean with us again tonight. How we doing, fellas?
Good to
Good,
see you
boys. How you
guys.
doing?
All right, awesome. We got a good show tonight. First, I want you guys to like, share, follow our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and keep interacting with us. It's been great. So leading off, we are going to get into the top 5 rotation for right now. However, I do want to ask you guys something before. I know we're not an all sports podcast, but with baseball in a lockout right now and those 4 NFL games this weekend, my hot take is baseball is in a heap of trouble. I think with those 4 games, where I was talking to my buddy Scott about this, was like the casual fan was tuning in to watch all these games. You had 3 games decided by a field goal with the closing seconds, and you had an overtime game where 2 quarterbacks were just absolutely slinging it across the field. Again, like comparing the NFL to the MLB is really tough, but baseball is in a lot of trouble right now. If they don't get the product on the field like yesterday, they're in big trouble. What are your views on that? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I agree fully. I think baseball's been in trouble for a while. Yeah. I think what football did last night, or in just the weekend, not just last night, but the overall weekend, all 4 games. I mean, to your point, all 4 games ended on the last play. Like that's crazy. That's crazy, and they were like good football games. I think baseball's been in trouble for a while, and I think like this football weekend really kind of puts a stamp on it. Mm-hmm. And the number one thing to me that baseball, and we've talked about it 1,000 times on this podcast, they don't get engagement with young fans.
Right.
Like they do everything they can to go out of their way for young fans to just be like, you know what, F this. Like, I mean, you don't see it. Like you have to have like a licensed MLB account to post shit on Twitter. Like that's insane. That's where everyone is. Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, we joked about it. They waited till any other Monday that they can release the MLB awards, any Monday they want. And they choose Monday night of the national championship football game. Like that's the Monday night they choose to release it in a press release.
Or even like the Hall of Fame vote coming out. It's going to be released tomorrow at 6. Like, it's so freaking random. Like, it's going to be on MLB Network, but not everybody has the MLB Network.
But you have to start there. Like, you have your own network. Use your network to promote your sport. Every time I turn on MLB Network, they're playing a movie. And, like, they're great movies. There's great movies out there.
Yeah.
But use that.
Right.
You know, like I just think like the way they're going about it is like all wrong. And then all of a sudden you have like teams like, and I tell you what the NHL did about signing that huge contract with ESPN. You know, now all these games that are like, $6 a month for ESPN, plus you can get any out of network NHL game that you want.
Yeah.
Like they're becoming much more accessible. Like everyone else is going out of their way to like make themselves more accessible to the times. And baseball is just like getting worse.
Yeah.
And then they go ahead and lock these players out. And then, I mean, I know we have an update on that, but like, when are we even going to see baseball again?
It's totally the truth, and it goes back to it was either last week or 2 weeks ago that we kind of beat up on MLB for all of its marketing efforts, as you were just talking about, Sean, how they do a poor job promoting the game, the players. Like everybody knew the storylines going into yesterday's games or the weekend's games. They knew about, could Aaron Rodgers finally win one? Could Tom Brady go out on top? Will Matt Stafford finally get a chance to win something? Like, all the storylines. Yeah, will Rodgers win a playoff game? No, I mean, come on. But people know the storylines. Like, now it draws them into the game. MLB is not hyping, look at this great pitching matchup in game 1 of the World Series. Like, they don't even announce the starting pitcher until like 2 hours before the first pitch half the time. It's like, there's no hype machine. There's no excitement generated. So the NFL generates all this excitement, and then they have a great product in the field to back it up. And it's like a drug. People just get hooked. It's like, I hate to draw this parallel, but like when we were kids and WWF at the time was like huge. But we knew every character's story, who they liked, who they didn't like, all the matchups, who were they going to see at SummerSlam versus WrestleMania, and like there was all these storylines to it. It was basically a male soap opera. effectively the NHL or the NFL is kind of storytelling and hype building in the same way that the WWF, now WWE, did for all those years. Like, they build up these storylines and these characters, and then people are invested in the outcome, so they watch.
Yeah, I mean, just watching those games, and before I even was talking to my buddy Scott about it, like, I was going to bring it up tonight, because it's like those 4 games, what I just watched, like, our team's not in it. Our teams didn't even, like, they're out, and we were glued to the TV this weekend. Like,
well, yeah, and I think the one thing baseball, like, I feel like baseball has this kind of like attitude, which I think like hardcore baseball fans have almost adopted, where it's just like, yeah, well, football's different. They only play once a week, and it's their game with the physical head to head. Like, their game is meant to be dramatic the way it is. Baseball is like this beautiful game, yada yada, which it is.
Right.
But like, it's almost like they use it as an excuse to be like, well, it's different, so we're just not going to market like football, or it's different than hockey, so we're just not going to market like hockey. It's like, I get it, but like the strategies that they use, to Harrison's point, are absolutely something that you guys can and should have already adopted.
Yeah.
Like, you don't, football does quarterback versus quarterback. You don't have to do starting pitcher versus starting pitcher. But the fact that Mike Trout's on ESPN 3 times a year is an abomination.
Yeah.
Like, it's an absolute travesty. I mean, I know the team is not great, but you have 2 of the most marketable players playing on one team, and you can count on one hand the amount of times they're on ESPN. That's a joke.
Yeah.
That's an absolute joke.
Yeah. I actually just shared a meme, or it's a picture of Pedro at Yankee Stadium, and it said, look at how engaged every baseball fan was before the cell phone took over humanity. Not a single fan in that crowd cared that the game was 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's just like today's society, right? Like cell phones and all that stuff, all those distractions. Like,
so you have to adjust.
Exactly.
Like, you have to adjust, and especially a game like baseball. And I don't think there's any, like, the 3 of us love the game of baseball, obviously, but it is a game that is a slower pace than football. I mean, you go to a hockey game, a lot of people's phones aren't out because they miss a bunch of shit. Like, your phone can't. In baseball's inherently made for you to do something while you're watching a baseball game. That's why a ton of people will bring a scorebook and keep score, because it gives them something to do.
Right.
So if you're baseball, why not use that to your advantage? Why not have like all these major league ballparks like update their Wi-Fi and get people access to the internet? Let them share videos. Like, what do you care? Exposure's exposure. Like, what do you care if I'm sharing some grainy video that I took, or some marketable? Like, who gives a shit? I'm getting it out there.
And you're still gonna make your $35 million a year. No one gives a shit.
I'll never understand the thinking. It's almost like it's like these old white guys that sit behind the desk and they're just like, no, we don't want that, because people that go to baseball should love the game and they should pay attention. It's like, dude, especially our generation, when a phone is in our hand, we can do 7 things at once and pay attention to all of them. Like, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
It's not. They just need to adapt.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And every year that they don't, they're just falling further and further behind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll get into the lockout update a little bit later, but I just wanted to hear what your initial reactions were to that, because I mean, after that Bills and Chiefs game last night, I laid in bed and I was like, baseball's in trouble.
Dude, I'll say this.
That's crazy.
I will give you my final thought on that. The 4th and final game, the Chiefs-Bills game last night. The Patriots having to deal with Josh Allen for the next 10 years is going to be a problem. Yeah. But as long as Sean McDermott is the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, I'm not that worried. That guy stinks in situational football. Stinks.
So bad.
But I think they also have to change the overtime rules, because not giving Josh Allen a chance after the slugfest back and forth, it's not.
That game never should have gone to overtime is the problem. McDermott screwed that up bad.
I will give you that, Nick, but I agree. I agree that the last 11 times that the game went into overtime, 10 of them was won by the team that got the ball first. So I give you the rule itself stinks. However, last night never even should have got there. Like, they screwed that over 7 different ways. That was awful.
Yeah, I hear.
I actually part of me wonders if not to jump the gun, we'll come back to it, but part of me wonders if the Players Association was so quick to put the proposal out this morning with some major reductions from the original ask because of what they saw this weekend. realizing
I
that
wouldn't be surprised.
the players are realizing that the damage they're doing is only benefiting the NFL and other sports.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about today's society, right? The attention span of especially the younger generation. It is the ultimate "what have you done for me lately" mentality. And if baseball goes 5 or 6 months without being relevant, it might never be fully relevant ever again, because people are just not going to care. They'll find other things to care about. I mean, everything we want is right at our fingertips. Like, so they're not going to like pine for baseball like we will. Like, they don't care.
Right.
If they go 5 months without being relevant, fuck it. We'll find another sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that being said, let's get into our talking about not being relevant. My number one starter, Jacob deGrom. Never on the field, not relevant. But anyways, top 5 rotation right now. Who would you take? I'll start. I'll go Jacob deGrom, number 1. My number 2 is Max Scherzer. My number 3 is Walker Buehler. My number 4 is Corbin Burns. And then my number 5, which is Pedro Martinez certified, is Sixto Sanchez. Pedro Martinez.
Okay.
Pedro Martinez.
Maybe even better because his stuff is just straight
disgusting.
up filthy. Yeah. So I'm going out on a limb, and I'm if they get on the field this year, I'm expecting a big year out of him.
Kind of hard to
That's
argue.
a good one. I mean, that's tough to argue with.
All right, I'll go. So I got a lot of overlap with you, Nick. So my number 1 guy is Walker Buehler. I love Walker Buehler. I would trade everybody in the Red Sox organization on that roster for him right now. So Buehler, I got Scherzer, I got Corbin Burns, and then I got Zach Wheeler, who for the last 2 years has been the best pitcher in baseball statistically.
Yeah.
Too bad he's on a team that's not that good or not as good as it should be. But his stuff has been absolutely lights out for 2 straight seasons. And give that guy a little bit of run support, I'd be afraid of what he'd actually do in the NL East. And then lastly, and I hate to say this, I'm going to cover my nose, Garrett Cole. I hate him.
You better hope your team never has a big game in the playoffs, buddy.
That's why he's my 5th starter. He'll be in the bullpen in the playoffs, so it's fine.
Yeah,
you have Zach Wheeler, who's going to get hurt. Zach Wheeler's going to end up having some kind of arm surgery, and Garrett Cole's going to get pushed up, and you're going to need him in a big game 4, and you're going to be upset you have Garrett Cole on your team.
You know what? I'm during the regular season, I'm going to love having Garrett Cole. In the playoffs, you're right. I'm going to be really mad about it.
Good Lord.
They don't get hurt in video games if you turn the injuries off.
That's true. And if this was MLB The Show with injuries off, Jacob deGrom would already be putting up like Cy Young. He'd be in the Hall of Fame already.
Oh. How about your 5, Sean?
I approached it a little bit differently. My 5 are not, these are not who I think are the best 5 pitchers in baseball. I do have deGrom as my number 1 starter, obviously, but these are not.
Speaking of getting hurt.
Are 5 best. Well, so here we go. Listen, here we go. So I have deGrom's my number 1 starter. He's stud. Guy's an absolute animal. We know deGrom. We've said it 1,000 times. Number 2, Walker Buehler. So we all have Walker Buehler. Love the kid. Absolutely nasty. And he's got like big watermelon stones too. Like, he's a guy I have no problem putting on the mound in a road game when you need it. Like, give him the ball. Number 3, I have John Means. And I know right before, I like John Means a lot. I really do. I know that it was Seattle that he threw the no-hitter, but, he's got nasty stuff. He's a young, tall lefty, and I think it's important to have lefties in the lineup, in the rotation. John Means 3. Number 4, Max Fried. I don't know how you pronounce it, but another big, young stud lefty, right? Young kid that's only going to get better. And my number 5, completely out there, but I have to explain why I have him. Nathan Eovaldi. Only reason why I have Nathan Eovaldi as my number 5 starter. That guy is the biggest bulldog in baseball. Yep. And I know a guy like deGrom's going to get hurt. So you're going to need someone to step up. Eovaldi has proven that he will do that in a pinch, step up when he has to. But more importantly than that, a guy like Nathan Eovaldi is going to teach Buehler, Means, Max Fried how to be absolute bulldogs on the mound. Like, that mentality, like every World Series winner has somebody like that on their team. Like, somebody that's just like, you know what, I'm not taking any shit today. Like, I'll be the guy that speaks up in the locker room if I have to, or I'll be the guy that goes, and gets it done on the field for 11 extra innings in a World Series, like whatever. whatever's needed. Like that kind of mentality is really contagious. And that's why I certainly do not think he's a top starter in baseball. But you give me young arms and you give me Eovaldi at the bottom of that rotation. I'm loving that. He's going to give you everything he's got every 5 days.
Yeah. I mean, I was honestly contemplating Shohei if he was just a pitcher. Possibly. I was contemplating it because, you don't know what his full potential is because he only throws 100 innings a year.
I agree.
That's all he's going to throw going forward. So you don't know what you're going to get if he makes 35 starts in a year. So, I mean, that's why I was like, I mean, does he have the stuff to do it? Sure. And then the other person you said, Harrison, was Robbie Ray.
I'm not buying last year. That guy was trash up until last season. I think this is going to be like that season. You get the occasional Cy Young runner that comes out of nowhere, and that's just it's right. R.A. Dickey.
Also in Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, you get that
Also
occasional
Toronto,
season,
exactly.
right? Exactly, something going on in Toronto, but you sometimes just get that weird season from that one guy that just says like everything clicks and then like they go back into purgatory, and I feel like that's what Robbie Ray is. I think he was trash leading up to last year, then he was excellent last year. I just don't buy that being Robbie Ray, and so he's not a guy that I would bank on.
Right, but he did go to the Mariners. If you're going to go to any division in baseball, it's the AL West. I mean, or the AL Central, but the AL West is terrible. I mean, other than the Astros, well, and we don't know what the Rangers have this year, but I mean, goodness gracious, he might put up more Cy Young numbers out there if he's facing those guys, 85 games
in those ballparks too. Those are
big ballparks.
Out west.
I look at Robbie Ray's season. Last year, kind of like that Rick Porcello season with the Red Sox.
Yeah.
He was okay beforehand. He was okay after, but he had that like one lights out year. I think that's Robbie Ray. I think he's going to be a 500 pitcher, except for last year when he caught lightning in a bottle and just was lights out.
Yeah. I mean, can't go wrong with any of those arms, though. I mean, I'd take any of them at the top, but.
Well, and I think of the pitchers that aren't on that list. Like I really wanted to put a lefty in my rotation, so I really kind of thought about putting Urias in there because the guy won. He was the only 20-game winner of all of baseball last year, but he was the Dodgers' third starter only because he sat behind friggin' Scherzer and Buehler.
Right.
That guy's anybody else's number one.
Right.
And
and he's a young kid too. It's not like he's not 30.
Yeah.
No. I mean, there's some seriously good talent out there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I see your point, Stacey. I'm not saying your team is trash, but every team that they play is trash. You can't convince me that the Angels are good. Sorry, until they prove it, they're not good. The Oakland A's are the Oakland A's. Texas Rangers have been scraping the bottom of the barrel for years. Getting Seager and Simeon.
Don't talk about my Rangers like that.
Listen, Seager and Simeon are great signings, but they still have to prove it. I mean, it's just other than the AL Central, which I think is the worst division right now. The AL West is a close second. I mean, it's just it is what it is.
I don't know, man. I mean, I know they just won the World Series. I think you can put the NL East in competition there. I'm not like I know the Mets. I'm a Mets fan. Listen, I think the rotation, obviously, Scherzer. They made some updates but again, you got to prove it. But I mean, I think the biggest thing the Mets did was go get Buck Showalter. But the rest of the division, they have to prove it. And the Braves won the World Series. They're gritty. They won 80-something games.
88.
I could see easily. I could see the Braves coming out this year winning 91, 92 games and getting a wild card spot. I don't see maybe it's a competitive division in that sense because there are I think the Mets, the Phillies are. I mean, the Phillies are the Phillies. I don't know how I feel about the Phillies. They get one or two good players. But how do you trust them as a team?
Nope.
No. Nationals will win 20 games this year. That's about it.
Maybe. Good Lord.
Yeah. I mean, when the Marlins are going to finish third, I think we got some issues. But
right.
Anyway,
that's because Sixers going to win 33 games. You're going to be 33-0 this year.
Yeah. Sixto will win as many games as the entire friggin' Nationals team, I bet.
It's true. But it will be interesting to see what happens with the parity. If they do come up with that salary floor and the salary cap, in the next couple of years, it's really going to start leveling out, and you're going to see players go places that they wouldn't normally go, and hopefully, because listen, I love the Sox. I love, everybody, but it's the same 8 teams in the playoffs every single year. And I would love to see the Pirates in there one year. I'd love to see the Diamondbacks back, I want to see some parity.
The Royals get in there once because they catch lightning in a bottle with their young players, and then they can't keep their young players, and now they're back to being trash again.
Right, exactly.
I'm with you on that.
The cycle continues.
Exactly.
Right.
Which is fine if it cycles through, but there still should be some parity. Right, it doesn't at all.
Right.
So, all right. Well, we'll move on to the 5th inning showdown here, where Harrison and Sean are going to debate who had the better Philadelphia Phillies career, either Roy Halladay or Cliff Lee. Oh, before we go on, Morgan just put in a comment about the NL Central being the weakest, which is true. They're not great either. Pirates, Cubs, Reds are always there but never get in, and then the Brewers get into the first round and then lose. The Cardinals are the only consistent team.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's true.
That's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
Both Central divisions are not great, but of course, when you think about it, your big markets aren't in the Central. Other than Chicago, these are not. Right. These teams are not sitting in really big markets. They tend to be the low revenue share teams.
But you, to your point last week, St. Louis loves their baseball.
They do.
That's a baseball city. It may not be a huge market, but that's a huge baseball city.
Yeah.
Oh, massive. Cincinnati's not. Milwaukee sort of is. Chicago, it depends on if they're good or not. And then we all know the Pirates. Nobody goes to those games because they've been so bad so long.
Yeah. But, that's the thing. That's probably why people aren't watching baseball anymore, is because 20 out of the 30 teams are freaking awful. They got to fix something here. But,
yep.
All right, moving on. So, 5th inning, Roy Halladay will be taken by Harrison, and Cliff Lee will be taken by Sean. This is for only their Phillies careers. This is not for their overall career. So what they did in Philly, who was the most valuable pitcher at that time? Both of them were complete lights out during that stretch, but who would like to take it first?
I'll go with Halliday first.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So first of all, what's disappointing is both these guys ended their careers in Philly. So you didn't necessarily get the best of them in Philly. And they didn't really win a lot in Philly necessarily either. So it's an interesting one. But I took Halladay, I think his career before Philly was unreal. What he did in Toronto was unreal. But he gets to Philly in 2010. He wins 21 games. In 11, he wins 19. In 12, he wins 11. And then 13, he wins 4, and he was already basically on his way out of baseball at that point. So really, you only really have a 3-year sample set here of when Halladay was healthy and dominant, and the 4th year was just him basically trying to muscle through and finish off his career. But when you look at his time in Philly, including the crappy year, the guy won 55 games in 4 years. Really, most of those happened in 3. ERA of 3.25. He gave him 100 starts. And really, when you look at the 2010 season, when he carried that team, he led the league in wins. He led the league in complete games with 9. He led the league in shutouts with 4. Pitched 250 innings. Faced almost 1,000 batters. Won the Cy Young. Finished 6th in the MVP voting. Won an All-Star, or was on the All-Star team. So in 10 and 11. He finished 1 and 2 in the Cy Young, All-Star both years, and in the top 10 in the MVP voting both years. Absolutely, probably in that 2-year window with Philly, he was the most dominant pitcher in all of baseball, hands down, no questions asked. ERA under 2.5 both years. Absolutely unhittable stuff after coming off of all those years in Toronto when, he pitched well on teams that were, pretty good. They weren't great. And when you look at the overall body of work, that 2-year period was the best there was in baseball. And then 12 and 13, they got 15 wins out of him as he basically finished off his career. So I think when you look at what that team had at the time, I think Halladay was all they had at the time. They had won it in 08. They were trying to find their way to see if they could keep the momentum going. And he carried that pitching staff until he couldn't anymore.
Yeah, I mean, 2010 was a dominant year, Roy Halladay. Like, that guy was we talk about unhittable. I mean, that was disgusting. But then the interesting thing that the Phillies went and did, though, is they're going to go get Cliff Lee the next year in 2011. So Cliff Lee, I mean, while he did have, 2009 kind of split the year in Philadelphia, but then goes out 2011, full-time Philadelphia Philly, finishes third in the Cy Young that year. And I'm not entirely sure he shouldn't have finished second above Roy Halladay and flipped those two. I mean, they pretty much had identical, and they both Halladay threw, I think, 233, and Cliff Lee threw 232 and 2/3. So I mean, they're pretty much right there. They throw the same amount. Cliff Lee led the league. He had 6 complete games. All 6 complete games were shutouts. Led the league in shutouts. 6 complete games, 6 shutouts. Sub 2.5, 2.4 ERA. 32 starts. So he gave you 30-plus starts, 6 shutouts, 232 innings, 238 strikeouts, which when I look, kind of right there, 10, 12 strikeouts or so more than what Roy Halladay gave you. So I found it interesting that Halladay kind of had that dominant year in 2010 and then backs it up with a year in 2011 where he finishes second in the Cy Young. And I'm not so sure Cliff Lee shouldn't have finished ahead of him, but it is kind of 1A, 1B, or in this case, 2A, 2B.
A couple of puts and takes, but they were pretty similar years.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I think, we 5 total years, but again, 2011, 12, 13, and 14 were really his kind of 4 years in Philadelphia. It gave you 118 wins. 118 wins. 118 starts. He gave you 48 wins. As a Philadelphia Philly, 2.94 ERA, 8 shutouts, 6 of them came in 1 year. And the guy walks 124 in 5 years in Philadelphia, had 124 walks, 813 Ks. So we talk about a guy like Cliff Lee, and I think we all remember him, especially the late Cleveland, but this was a guy that would just find the zone. There were years where he was dominant, no doubt about it, but he wasn't like a blow you away kind of guy. Like, Cliff Lee wasn't the guy that was just going to get out there and just hit like fastball slider. Like, he pitched. Like, he had to pitch. And he was those 4 years in Philadelphia, especially the first two, 2011 and 2012. 2011, 2013, the 2 All-Star years. He won 17 games in 2011, backed it up. Tough year in 2012. Couldn't stay healthy. Only gave you 30 starts, actually. So more starts than I thought.
They weren't really good starts, though.
Year. Yeah, no. Down in his year. Comes back in 2013, 14-8, 31 starts. So, I mean, we're thinking, even including 2012, I mean, it was 32 starts in 2011, 232 innings. And then 30 starts in 2012, 211 innings. And then 2013, 31 more starts, 222 in 2/3 innings. So those 3 years, I mean, he was dependable. He was a guy that would go out there every 5 days. I think when we talk about the overall careers, I don't think it's too much of a contest. I think Halladay, especially those years in Toronto where
so good.
I mean, they were terrible teams, some terrible, terrible baseball teams. But I do think the Philly years are a whole lot closer. Unfortunately, 2011 was the only year that Cliff Lee finished in the top 5 of Cy Young. He finished in the 6th for Cy Young 6th place in 2013. But that was a really talented and really tough 1-2 punch that those Philadelphia Phillies teams had in those 2 or 3 years.
What about their playoff performances here? How were they in the playoffs?
Underused.
Halliday had the no-hitter, right? Didn't he have the last postseason no-hitter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sadly for Halladay, he only got 5 postseason starts. They were all in 2010 and 2011. He was 3-2 with a 2.37 ERA. He was 2-1 in the NLDS, 1-1 in the NLCS. He lost in the NLCS in 2010. It was
I mean, Cliff
he
Lee
had the
kinda
no-hitter, but
same.
he unfortunately had a tough go of it because he didn't get a lot of starts.
Yeah.
Cliff Lee kind of similar. I mean, he had in 2009. I mean, when they went to the NLCS, Philadelphia went to the World Series, I should say. I mean, he won 4 games, but really when he came back and he had those 4 straight years, he had 1 start in the NLDS against St. Louis, 2011. He lost it. Not a very good showing. Looks like 6 innings, 12 hits, 5 runs, all earned,
Yeah, he
2
got
walks. Yeah,
pretty
that's
well
kind of
lit
got
up.
kicked around a little bit. But he didn't have too many, like career-wise even, not just Philadelphia, but the overall career, not too much postseason experience. It's like 11 total starts.
Yeah, and so Halladay threw that no-hitter in the 2010 NLDS against Cincinnati, and then he followed that up with a loss in the NLCS in 2010, and then a loss in the 2011 NLDS. I say he was 1-1 in the NLDS. So aside from the no-hitter, he was okay in the playoffs, but sadly did not get a lot of shots.
Yeah. I mean, I would take either one of them, to be completely honest. Especially, I'd probably lean towards Halliday in that first year, just for how dominant he really was. But Cliff Lee was steady his entire career. There wasn't much fall off, right? I know we're not talking about his whole career, but in a way it does kind of play in, right? Because the Philadelphia Philly Cliff Lee you got was the same that you got on all his other teams, which arguably you could say that about Halladay too, but Toronto's definitely not going to the playoffs with more than the Phillies are. So
yeah, I mean, the fair thing, I will give you that about the career wise. I mean, Cliff Lee really starting in 2004 is when he really came on. 2002 and 2003, he was just had a maybe got called up late, and he we threw 10 innings in 22, and then 51 innings or 52 innings in 2003. But starting in 2004, he had 33 starts, 32 starts, 33 starts, and then 20 starts, and then 31, and then 34, and then 28, 32, 30, 31. So, I mean, this guy was 27 starts or more every year since 2005, which is pretty crazy. So that's pretty as consistent as you're going to get.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing when you look at the career stats, though. I mean, Cliff Lee in his career only won 143 games.
Which is, isn't that nuts? In
that
13 years. Isn't that nuts?
Looking at his career stats, I literally just stared at them going, that can't be right. But then you look at some of the seasons he had, like look at 2012 in Philadelphia, 30 starts, he went 6-9 with a 3.16 ERA.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell happened? Like, and he had a couple of seasons like that where he was good and just didn't get the decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, right. That's why they're talking about that, like the WAR versus the wins and loss record, because it's so the wins and losses just don't add up sometimes. You could throw 8 innings of shutout ball and lose 1-0 in the and
right.
Don't
But
get a
I'll
decision.
say when you're looking at someone's overall career, though, like I would say 90% of the time, if you throw 8 innings of shutout ball, you're getting the win.
You
know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
But like I think there's something to be said. Like everyone's going to have off years, like 1 or 2 years here or there where they just didn't get the run support. But there's something to be said for somebody that starts 30 games and ends up with 23 decisions, win or loss. But there's something to be said for somebody that stays in the game and gets the. Not to say anything negative about someone that ends up with a ton of no decisions, but I don't know. It's just the way I look at it sometimes, and I'm just like you couldn't have given me another inning. Like you couldn't have battled through another inning for me. I don't know. And maybe I'm just thinking too much. Maybe I'm in my own head.
Also, the other thing that I kind of don't like is that the starting pitchers have to go 5 innings in order to get a decision. Where a bullpen
in order to get a win. In order to get a win.
Sorry,
you can get a loss.
win. They can get a loss. Sorry. To get a win. However, a bullpen guy can come in and throw 1 pitch and get a win.
Right.
That's broken. I'm sorry. If you start the game and you get pulled in the 3rd inning and you're up 25 to -4 and you finish the game with a lead, never give it up, you get the win. That's how it should be.
I agree.
That's what happens when a reliever comes in. Like this whole 5-inning mandatory to get a win is bogus. I don't like that. So
yeah, I don't. I agree with you. I agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah.
So take that argument and go to, so think of these bullpen games. So say Dave Roberts wants to blow another playoff series and decides to start Kenley Jansen. He goes 1 inning, leaves the game 1-0. They end up winning the game 1-0. You're going to give Kenley Jansen a 1 inning win because he started.
Yeah, if they don't give
In
up
that sense, yeah.
Yeah, if they don't give up
Yes.
the lead at all.
That's where I kind of like the MLB 5 inning requirement, because really in the first 5 innings of the game, nothing matters. I mean, really, you could, unless you're up huge, there's so much of that game changes late. And that's why with that 5 inning minimum, you protect the starter from coming in and throwing 3 1/3 and, leaving the game winning, 8-7 because he's pitching like crap, but his offense is hitting the ball, still getting a win for an outing when really he left before the game was decided.
Cal Ripken Jr. did it for his consecutive streak. He left the games early, still counted. So
but he left after the 5th inning.
Right, but so why can't that counts as a full game? He should have to play the whole entire game in order to get credit. That's
counts as a game played. Well, it counts as a game play. It doesn't count as a win, though.
Whatever. I don't know. I just trying to play devil's advocate there.
I get it.
I don't know. I think that's just a silly rule that a bullpen guy can come in, throw one pitch, and get the win.
Well, it is, but if it's in the 8th inning, and then you could argue that was in the game. No game's ever been decided in the 1st inning.
I beg to differ when the Dodgers put up 11 against the Cardinals in the first round of the playoffs there a couple of years ago. But anyways, yeah. But
they could have scored 11 in the 2nd. They could have scored 11 in the 7th.
But they didn't. So the pitcher should get the win. That's just what I think. All right. Anyways.
Could you imagine the stats? Some of the wins these pitchers would have if that was allowed, like the times they left after like 4 1/3 in a blowout game.
But who is that hurting?
Nobody.
Like, that's what I don't get. Like, so what? Like, they were the pitcher of they were winning. I don't care if it was 8-7. I don't care if it was 1-0. I don't care if it was 1,000-0. Like, they started the game. The team went up. It's a team sport. Like, he didn't score all the runs by himself. Like, the reliever didn't get in and hit the grand slam to tie the game in the 8th inning. But, like,
unless you're Bob Gibson,
like, it's a team sport. Like,
you're Bob Gibson.
Like, you're winning when you're taken out. Your team is winning. The team never surrenders that lead. I'm kind of with Nick. Like, I really don't think it should matter what inning you. Like, I get your point. Like, no game's ever won or lost in the 4th inning. Like, I get that. But if that's the case, like, if we take that further to the end, then, like, the only one that should get the stats, the closer. Like, because it's only won or lost in the 9th in that sense, right? Like, if that's the logic we're taking.
But then now they have holds and all this stats that you can get too. But
I don't know. I just think that. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that if you start the game and your team is winning when you leave and you never surrender that lead, like, you should get the win.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it. But yeah, all right. We're going to move on to the 7th inning stretch where we are on the NL Central part of our Mount Rushmore. I have the Brewers and the Reds. Harrison has the Cardinals and the Cubs. No, Cardinals and Pirates, and then Sean's got the Cubs. So I'll go first here. I'll do the Milwaukee Brewers first. I got Robin Yount. He's the only Major League Baseball player to win an MVP at 2 different positions. 3,000 hit club. Also got Paul Molitor, 3,000 hits for him. 504 stolen bases, 1,000 walks, 7-time All-Star.
Jeez.
Ryan Braun. I know it's a little controversy here, but I mean,
nope.
6-time All-Star, 5-time Silver Slugger, 350 home runs, 300 average, top 3 in all offensive categories for team history. Like, I mean, drugs or no drugs, whatever. Like, he was there. And then my last guy was Prince Fielder. So he has the team. Yes, he has the team records for home runs and the youngest player in National League history to hit 50 home runs in a season. So, and he was the first player to win the home run derby for both the AL and the NL. but yeah, he was my fourth. I was going back between him and Ben Sheets. I don't know if you guys remember Ben Sheets,
Of course.
he was filthy for them. His only issue was he was injured a lot.
Oh, all the time.
No Richie Sexton.
I love
Dude,
Richie
animal
Sexton.
off the bench that like half a year.
He was good,
Half
but
a
I
year
remember
off the bench,
him.
He was nasty.
I remember him in Arizona better than I do Milwaukee, believe it or not. But
I think
will
I'm back
tell you
in
this.
Cleveland, so
The only reason I picture him, and I'll tell you this, I'll give you another one, Seattle. The only way I picture him in a Brewers uniform is I went to a game in Wrigley back in like 2006. We did like a family road trip, and we were in Chicago, and then the Brewers were playing obviously in Chicago, and we were in Wrigley, and first time and really only time we ever been there, and we were there early for like batting practice or whatever, and I saw Richie Sexton hit a batting practice ball, and it was like a line drive to just like one hop the fence, but it was probably like the hardest hit at that point in my life that I had ever seen, and now I just associate Richie Sexton with just hard hit baseballs.
Yeah.
Even though he really wasn't that good. But brain, Richie Sexton.
When he got into one though, dude, he got into it.
The guy was like 6'11" or something like that.
Or whatever it was. He was huge.
He was massive. I swear to God, that guy was like 6'11", swinging like a 28-inch bat. Like he had like that swing that like stopped halfway.
Yeah.
Like that's as far as his swing went. But that guy hit laser beams or nothing.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. All right, Harrison, you're four.
All right, I'll start with the Pirates. Just get them out of the way. No surprise here. There is nobody in recent history for the Pirates worth talking about. So number one, I'm pretty sure that anybody that's ever seen baseball would pick this one out, would be Roberto Clemente. Don't really need to say a lot about Roberto. But a guy was the 1966 NL MVP, 12-time Gold Glove winner, 3,000 hits, 317 career average. There's a quote about him. He could field the ball in New York and throw out a guy in Pennsylvania. That was an old Vin Scully quote. He could field the ball in New York and throw out a guy in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, awesome.
There's no way anybody in Pirates history comes anywhere near just the mystique even of Roberto Clemente. Number two, Willie Stargell. 475 home runs, 1,560 RBIs, almost 1,000 extra base hits, all franchise records. From 1970 to 1973, he averaged 39 home runs and 110 RBIs a year while batting .288.
Is that good?
I mean, back in the 70s, that was really good.
Yeah. That's not.
And so on their way to their fifth World Series. Back in 1979. In the playoffs, he went 12 for 30 with 3 home runs, 7 runs scored, and 7 RBIs.
Good Lord.
So effectively, he was a one-man wrecking crew in 1979 at the age of 39, bringing them to their last World Series. Number three, I had to go way back to Honus Wagner. He was there for 17 years. He led the league in batting 8 times, RBIs 5 times, stolen bases 5 times. He helped them win 4 of their 9 NL pennants and their very first World Series championship. He still holds a number of team records to this day, some of which probably won't ever be broken.
And then looking baseball card.
Oh my God! And one of the most valuable creepy looking baseball cards.
And it's not the most valuable anymore.
Not anymore,
right?
no, but it was.
Baseball card.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
And then lastly, Ralph Kiner. He was a Pirate for 7 years, and he hit. He led the NL in each of those seasons in home runs, twice hitting more than 50. And in 1949, he set the Pirates record of 54 in a season.
Wow.
Was a hitting machine and a home run machine. Once every 13 at bats, he went yard.
Good Lord.
which is just a click behind Bonds, who was 1 out of 11, all juiced up.
That's insane.
That's crazy.
Ridiculous.
1 in 11.
Wow.
Yeah, insane. And then the interesting thing is, so a lot of people still think of Bonds with the Pirates. When you look at Bonds' numbers with the Pirates, they weren't that impressive. He was there for 7 years, had 175 home runs, and had a 275 batting average. He won 2 MVPs. I don't know how he won the MVPs while he was there.
He had a 40-40 season.
I was
pretty
gonna
sure.
say.
Yeah, it was. He had 2
definitely did.
seasons that don't look like the rest, and otherwise he was a marginal player. It just strange. When you look at his Pirates numbers are just weird.
Did he win a Gold Glove there?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I believe it was
that counts.
1 or 2.
Yeah.
Just that's it.
That under the rug.
Just 1 or 2.
Yeah, no big deal.
You know, we get a bunch on this podcast, so we can just poo-poo 1 or 2 Gold Gloves.
He won. So 3. He won 3 Gold Gloves.
Just
His last 3 seasons there.
In 7 years. 50% of the time he was there, he was a Gold Glove winner.
Yeah, it's fine. And then he won the MVP in 90 and then 92.
Good Lord.
But he had a terrible career in Pittsburgh.
I don't think anyone has ever poo-pooed those kind of statistics like Harrison just. He goes, oh, they're not that impressive. 3 Gold Gloves, 2 MVPs, 175 bombs. No biggie.
Yeah, I mean, in 7 years, I mean, okay. 7 years, 175. I mean,
that's the thing,
20,
right?
25 a season and 80 RBIs. I mean, those are JD Drew's numbers. Nobody's trying to drag JD Drew to the town square as an MVP.
JD Drew also didn't win 2 MVPs with Boston, a couple Gold Gloves, and have a 40-40 season in there either.
Oh, sure.
But I mean, you compare Barry Bonds in San Francisco and his career in Pittsburgh. Right. They don't compare. Like to Harrison's
and
point,
the 40 season wasn't in Pittsburgh. Yeah, the 40-40 wasn't in Pittsburgh.
It wasn't?
I thought it was.
No,
I would have put money on it was.
No, it was his first year in San Fran.
Oh, okay. I take that part back. Obviously, yeah. I thought that I would have put money on that was in Pittsburgh.
No, his home run totals in Pittsburgh, he hit 16, 25, 24, 19, 33, 25, 34. Then he was gone.
Gotcha. Wow.
So I mean, really, I mean, his first 4 seasons were pretty unremarkable. And then he had 3 years in a row where he went from 14, 25 and 116, 34 and 103, and then he left for San Fran.
Yep, gotcha.
See, I could have argued for you, like the only modern day player that I would possibly even put on there is Andrew McCutchen. He's the only one that kind of kept that franchise afloat when they were going to the wild card game there every year.
Yep.
And losing. But I mean, he's the only modern day player that I think I could put on that. But yeah, I mean, you can't take any of those 4 off to put McCutchen on, though. That's the thing.
No, that's the hard part. Like, I kind of look at McCutchen as like an honorable mention. Like, he was really important to the city for a number of years, but you can't take somebody off for that, unfortunately.
And Bill Mazeroski. I mean, he's no slouch.
I know. Biggest home run of all time.
Yep. All right, Sean, Cubbies. What do you got?
Cubs. Yeah. I wanted so bad, just disclaimer, I didn't do it. I wanted so bad to put John Lester on this. I love John Lester, but last week was John Lester's show, and so I won't make today about John Lester. But I wanted so badly to put John Lester on this list. I mean, how do you not put the guy named Mr. Cub first? But I mean, Jesus. Lifelong Cub, 19 years. 14 of those years he was an all-star. 14 years. Back-to-back MVP, 1958, 1959. Ernie played 2,528 games with the Cubs. Obviously, most all time. Franchise record for most at-bats, most plate appearances, total bases, all that good stuff. Guy was an animal. Number 2, I think it probably would be everyone's number 2, maybe not, Ryan Sandberg. Also 10-time All-Star in 15 years, 9 Gold Gloves, 7 Silver Sluggers. So this guy wasn't just like really good offensively, kind of good defensively, or vice versa. The guy was just an animal at everything he did.
Yep.
Also spells his name really weird, but that's whatever.
Ryan.
And yeah, Ryan. I tell you, until I was probably like, I'm 31 now. Until I was probably like 25, I didn't know how you pronounced it. I
still call him Ryan. Always will.
That's not Ryan. Anyway. MVP, obviously National League MVP in 1984. Went to the NLCS that year, upset, obviously lost, but Ryan Sandberg, awesome. Number 3, this is where I was going to put John Lester, because I love John Lester, but Ron Santo. Hard to take a guy off, and I know these are 3 like old-timer guys, but hard to take a guy off who had 2,171 hits as a member of the Cubs and 337 home runs. So he was kind of like, he won 5 Gold Gloves. So he was a pretty, like, a good defensive player, but he was no slouch at the plate either. You know, and I don't have a pitcher on there, and John Lester was the one guy I wanted to put on, but I couldn't. And then fourth, Sammy Sosa. Before people get upset, I get it, right? I get it with the whole Sammy Sosa thing. But as we've all talked about on this podcast 100 times, that race in 1998, in the summer of 1998, saved baseball. Saved baseball. Mm-hmm. It did, you know, and Sammy Sosa was not just part of it. He was like the other half of it. Like, it was like, it wouldn't have happened without Sammy Sosa. I know I shit on Sammy Sosa for being the king of the meaningless home run, which he certainly is, and I'll never take that back. But from what he did from 1998 to 2002, and I didn't know this until I looked this up. For those 4 years, 98 to 2002, his lowest home run total in a season was 49.
Yeah, crazy.
So, and I know there's Fergie or Wood or Rizzo. I get that. I totally get that. And Rizzo's probably more deserving, I would say, to be on there than Sammy Sosa, considering he did for a team that won the World Series that Sosa never did. Right. But I felt like this was my way to, like, give back a little bit to Sammy Sosa because I shit on him so much over the past, like, couple months. But I would say Chris Bryant. I would say Anthony Rizzo was like 4A, probably should be on there over Sammy Sosa, but that's where I'm going to leave it.
I mean, Carrie Wood, no slouch, that 20 strikeout game. That guy was a stud too. You can't go wrong.
He was.
I have a soft spot for all those 90s Cubs because, like I said before, WGN was on basic cable, and I'd come home and immediately throw on the Cubs, and it was Mark Grace, it was Ryan Sandberg, it was Sammy Sosa, Pryor and Wood, and I saw all those guys. All Derek Lee, I think, was on.
Derek Lee was the guy I was just going to.
Derek Lee, yeah.
D-Lee. I love that. And then that game got over. I'd go eat dinner and come back and watch the Braves on TBS until I went to bed. Like, it was just amazing. I miss those days when it was that easy and you didn't have to pay $85 a month to watch, two teams play.
I love the Sosa pick because for anybody that's in their 30s or 40s. Everybody remembers that 98 home run race when the Cubs were god awful. He gave you a reason to watch. Nothing better than watching him hit those day dingers at Wrigley Field on a Tuesday because they're still playing day baseball. Oh yeah, right. It was not exactly.
Well, they're losing 9-1. The game's already over. Guy hits a solo job
in the 8th inning and wants to celebrate.
Where was that in the 3rd inning, Sammy?
Yeah. Although some of those teams were so bad, he wasn't saving them.
I know.
It didn't matter.
Yeah, I know.
All right, so
go back and rewatch those sports episodes from the summer of 1998. Mark McGuire would be hitting a big game-changing bomb in like the 6th or 7th, and then they'd be like, "Can Sammy keep up?" And then Sammy would smoke one like 1,000 feet, and then it'd be like, that would make it 9-1. It's like, all right, like, come on, buddy. Like, at least keep your team in it here.
Yeah, it's so bad.
All right. Sorry, Nick.
It's all right. So I have the Reds. This one was a little tough because I could have put 6, 7, 8 guys on this list. Number one, Pedro Rose, 4,000 hits. You can't really go wrong with Pete Rose.
Pedro Rose, he's now Hispanic.
Yeah, Pedro Rose. All-time hit leader. It is what it is. Johnny Bench, 2-time MVP, led the league twice in home runs and RBIs 3 times, 10 Gold Gloves, 14-time All-Star. Animal. This is the only modern-day player I have on there. Barry Larkin. Barry Larkin grew up in Cincinnati. He was the first shortstop to ever have a 30-30 season. He was a 13-time All-Star, 3-time Gold Glove. Should have been 4, but who got it in the National League that year? Ozzie Smith. Shocker. And then
it's tough.
A 295 batting average career.
He probably didn't deserve it, though, Ozzie Smith. Probably didn't deserve the Gold Glove.
It won it on hype and reputation.
Yeah. And then my 4th is Frank Robinson. Frank Robinson was Rookie of the Year in 1956, MVP in 61, 8-time All-Star. And when you have a statue of yourself outside of the Great American Ballpark, you kind of can't leave him off Mount Rushmore. I mean, I guess you could because he's already immortalized, but whatever. It was really, really hard for me to leave off Tony Perez and Joe Morgan. I mean, I like those two, the Big Red Machine. Like, Joey
Votto. Joey Votto,
and Joey Votto too. I mean, there's so many I could have chose, and I just couldn't quite get myself to do it because those four are just so good that I just
I mean, those are. I mean, I know I wouldn't take any one of those four off to put someone on that you left off. Do you know what I mean?
No.
I probably would have picked Chris Sabo. Chris Sabo was up there on my list. You know, the old cork bat and the guy with the goggles. Do you ever remember Chris Sabo? He had, like, the big goggles.
Might as well put Rob Dibble on there too while you're at it.
Yeah, that guy threw gas, but
yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only tough one to leave off that list is Joe Morgan. I mean, that guy was a freak of nature.
Yeah, and he's a huge reason why they won all those World Series. Like, that one was really tough. And I probably would have taken Frank Robinson off, but as soon as I read there was a statue outside, I was like, I can't.
I mean, how do you do that though? Like, how do you literally need you need 5. You need 5 on this one.
And Frank Robinson won the MVP in the AL and the NL.
I was going to say that's my favorite Frank Robinson stat.
Sorry,
you beat me to it. That's all right.
Well, look at Joe Morgan. He was in Cincinnati for 8 years. He was an 8-time All-Star, a back-to-back MVP in 75 and 76, a 2-time World Series champion, and a 5-time Gold Glove winner in 8 seasons. Like an animal, and at a position of second base where people were like, that's a defensive position. Oh no, it's not.
So as crazy as this is going to sound, that's the reason I left him off, is because he only played 8 seasons.
I know.
That's
like,
right.
But like all those stats are silly. Like
Frank Robinson belongs on 2 Mount Rushmores. I mean, he belongs in Cincinnati and he belongs on Baltimore.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
Like that's crazy.
Yeah. But all right. So and Harrison, you got the Cads.
The Cardinals. And I during my Pirate section, I passed over the fact we've got beautiful PNC Park over my shoulder.
Yeah,
which actually is a beautiful ballpark. Unfortunately, that ballpark has not seen a lot of wins happen inside of it.
They have by the other teams.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. They've seen the other team win a lot of games. All right, so Cardinals, number 1, Stan Musial. Stan the man. Without question, he is the greatest Cardinal of all time.
Has to be.
Spent his entire career with the Cardinals, who won 3 World Series rings, 3 MVPs, and was an All-Star 24 times.
Jesus Christ.
He's first in team history in hits, runs scored, doubles, triples, home runs, RBIs, walks. There's very few offensive statistics he's not the holder of.
ERA wins.
What's that?
I was like, ERA wins, saves.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, no, because number 2 has the rest of that. That's Bob Gibson. Gibson. Gibson won 251 games, ERA of 2.91, 2-time Cy Young Award winner, won the 1968 MVP award, 9 Gold Gloves, threw a no-hitter in 1971. Was an absolute freak.
How did he only win?
And was the MVP of both World Series championships.
Yeah. How did he only win 2 Cy Youngs? That's a slap in the face right there.
Do you want to know my honest guess?
Well, yeah.
Which is awful. Which is absolutely awful, but I can guarantee you it played a factor.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I mean, that's
ridiculous.
Well,
which is awful.
And the thing is, the 2 seasons he won, like, he was so far and away better than everybody else. Like,
find ways, right? They couldn't find ways to get.
He had a 1.12 ERA in one of that MVP season. Like, He forced them to change the mound. They were like, we have to do something to slow this guy down. Like, we have to do something.
The guy is so good, he broke baseball.
He broke baseball.
Awesome.
All right, number 3, Albert Pujols. 2 World Series championships, hit almost 450 home runs in 11 seasons. He would have been the all-time Cardinal home run leader if he'd hit 31 more home runs before he left. So he was close to being the all-time home run leader. But clearly, 2 World Series championships, 3 MVPs, almost 450 home runs, clearly belongs on that list. And lastly, the guy that screwed Barry Larkin, Ozzie Smith. Ozzie Smith won 11 Gold Gloves as a Cardinal and 13 overall in his career.
That's crazy.
Just freakish.
Yeah. All right. Do we have the wheel for the NL West ready, or did we set
I will get the wheel. I will get the wheel ready right now.
All right. The Wheel of Doom. Here we go.
The Wheel of Doom.
Sean will have 2. I'll have 2, and Harrison 1. Correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So we need.
First thing will be Sean.
So we need the Padres. We need the Dodgers, the Giants. Oh, where'd it go? Dodgers, Giants. Oh, Diamondbacks. I'm like, who am I forgetting?
Yeah.
Not terribly remarkable.
Okay.
I hope I don't know if I can think of 4 really good Diamondbacks, so I hope I don't get them.
They're all going to be off that World Series team.
Yeah, they'll all be people that they just right.
Started Randy Johnson out of the bullpen. All right, so this one's for Sean. Who do we got here?
If it's the Diamondbacks, I'm going to lose it.
Good one.
The Dodgers.
Gross.
Only Brooklyn Dodgers.
Only Brooklyn.
Right. This one's for Nick.
All right, this one's for me. Give me those Diamondbacks. No, I'm going to get the... No.
Boom. All right, this one's mine. I'll get the Diamondbacks. Great. Thanks, guys. Here it comes.
Here it goes.
Perfect. Let's go. Your one team is the Diamondbacks. I love it.
Good, because it's going to take me some time to find some.
That's really the first time that the person with 1 spin since chapter.
I know. That's rough. All right, this is Sean's second.
Yep.
No, get out of there. Get out of there.
Oh.
Now I just get to fangirl about Tony Gwynn for 5 minutes.
Oh, and then Nick's going to wrap it up with the Rockies.
I'll take the Rockies. That's not a bad one.
No, that's not terrible.
Todd
Helton.
Yep. Larry Walker.
Helton, Walker, too low.
Blackman. Done. Okay. That's it for the NL West.
Boom.
All right. We are now going to move on to rounding third, where we threw out the question, who do we think is the most overrated player of all time? We got some responses, and there was quite a spectrum of players that were put out there.
I liked the vote for Derek Jeter, for the record.
So Dave Ingram said, he goes, let me guess, Nick's going to pick Jeter. And I go, personally, I don't think Jeter's overrated. I think the plays that he has made and been blown up, those are overrated. Him as a baseball player, definitely not overrated. He's rightly rated. But Chad Perrault, he said, hot take, Mike Trout. And I'm going to read what he said. And he makes a great point. It's like, as good as the guy is, and we all know he is, he had a few seasons where injuries plagued him. His numbers are astronomical, but the Angels' inability to get to the postseason hurts his godlike aura for me. I know he does all he can do, but one chance in 14, he posted an .083 batting average going 1 for 12. So, I mean, yeah. And he's like, my point is that Trout has been the face of baseball for years now, and I don't see him truly promoting the game in a way I think he could. He's a great player and will go down as so, but the question is most overrated player in history. And if Trout stays silent and doesn't win anything, his regular season stats and MVPs will be compared to Dan Marino. Yeah, I mean, hard to argue with that.
I'll say the one thing that I think baseball is equally as to blame as Mike Trout for the lack of promoting of Mike Trout. However, Mike Trout, and we've talked about this before, Mike Trout's he doesn't seem like that kind of guy that wants to get out there. He doesn't do commercials. He doesn't do advertisements. He's not like this like, and again, it's not, it is what it is. But like, I don't think Mike Trout's gone out there and like asked to be. He'd be like, "Oh, I want to be the face of baseball." Like I think he's just happy being a really, really damn good baseball player out in sunny California, and like, and maybe to that point, like that the fact that he doesn't have that drive to be like, "Hey, I'm going to go force my team to be great," maybe that does hurt him in the long run. So, maybe I can see that point. Interesting. I mean, it's a different take. It's an interesting take.
Well, and the flip side of that too, to go one step further, where kind of where you're going, Sean, is the fact that here's a guy who signed a contract that is so burdensome to the team, they can't build a winner around him. The guy's making almost $40 million a season. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that Tom Brady doesn't make more than $25 million a year when
salary cap.
Patrick Mahomes is making 40. It's because the team needs money to actually go and put players around him. I mean, Peyton Manning took team-friendly contracts towards the end of his career. Same thing. It was, I want to win, and whether I make 30 million or 40 million, I'm not going to notice the 10 million bucks, but I'm going to notice that if there's no rings on my hands. That contract is an absolute monster, and I don't see how the Angels can put a team around him when he alone is making potentially 20 to 30% of their overall payroll.
That's not 50% of it. That's
right. I mean, holy cow.
Yeah. So we're with you, Chad. I mean, right now, as it stands, like there's no argument against it, really. I mean, he's got to start winning. He's got to start winning. That's what it is. It comes down to that.
I mean, I think it all depends. It all like how you look at the question, right? Like, I don't think Mike Trout. I don't think Mike Trout's talent. I don't think Mike Trout's ability as a baseball player. I don't think the awards that he's won. I don't think any of that is overrated.
Right.
Like, he's earned every MVP. He earns like the ridiculously high WAR that he has because he's so ridiculous. Like, all those things have been earned. So I think he's rightly rated in that sense, but overrated in the sense of like, this is not a guy. Maybe Mike Trout, it's likely that he's never going to win a title in his career. So does that make him overrated? Maybe if that's the way you look at the question, then you certainly have a case, right? Yeah. So I just think that part. So, but
Stacy said Mariano Rivera. She thinks that he didn't deserve the first unanimous Hall of Fame choice. So I mean,
Griffey deserved it. Let's be honest. Griffey should have gotten it.
Well, and here's my thing with that is like, yes, Griffey was nasty, but Rivera did one thing and was still completely dominant. I mean, like, you knew a cutter was coming, and he still beat you with it and put up Hall of Fame numbers with that one pitch. I mean, sure. Like, if you're not going to put in unanimous Ken Griffey Jr. or people before that, then I don't think Rivera should have been the first one. I'm with her on that.
An argument can be made for Rivera that would he have been the player he was if he wasn't on that Yankees team? Because they were in the playoffs 16 times in his 19 seasons. Yeah. He was always in the playoffs. He won a bunch of rings. Would anybody? I look at a guy like Billy Wagner. Statistically, he's not Mariano. He's not that far off, and yet, like he's having a really tough time staying on the ballot, let alone getting inducted in. Rivera being unanimous still blows me away. I mean, I just don't see the closer role being that valuable. But he was so dominant on a team on a team that was so dominant for so long. How much of that plays into it?
Yeah. That's a great point. I mean, I didn't even really think about like the closer role being like valued that much to give him a unanimous decision. And I'm with you, Sean. I think Griffey should have been the first unanimous to begin with. Like, hands down, there shouldn't have been. Yeah, crazy. But
I mean, I'll take what you said, Nick, which I agree with, but just flip it to use it and say yes.
Not agree with me.
Well, but hold on. Mariano Rivera did one thing, and he did it nasty. But all he did was do one thing. He just did one thing.
Right.
Like, you have a guy like Griffey who did multiple things to help his team win every single day. Mariano did one thing only when his team was already winning and did it very well. But that's all he did. If his team was losing, If his team was losing,
He
Mariano
didn't go in the
didn't,
game. Yeah,
didn't sniff the
Yeah.
field.
that's a great
Right?
point.
So I can talk myself into Mariano being overrated.
Yeah.
Now, with
Right.
that being
Did
said,
he? Yeah.
not saying he's an overrated closer, but just saying in the context of the entire game of baseball, yeah, I can talk myself into that.
Right. Did he necessarily help his team win? No, he just helped them not lose.
The
Right?
guy
And there's a
the guy
difference.
played in 16 ALDSs, 9 ALCSs, and 7 World Series, and he had a .7 ERA and 141 innings pitched.
I know. Listen, I know.
Overrated.
It's,
It should be
it's
zero.
freakish. It's freakish.
He did one thing, but he did it better than anyone else has ever done that one thing.
Yep.
Yeah. But he did give up the walk-off
Totally
hit
agree.
to Luis Gonzalez to lose the World Series. So,
Oh, he
sorry.
has some of the most epic implosions in baseball
You know
history
who-
for sure.
Do you know who didn't give up the walk-off to Luis Gonzalez? Me. I didn't give up that walk-off.
Right.
You
Hall
won't
of
see me
Fame.
on that
You're in.
highlight tape. You won't
You're
see
in.
me on that highlight tape.
That's so
And then our last entry was by Steve Pierce. He said Chris Davis.
good.
All
I mean,
the
I
like
mean,
Oakland
Oriole.
Chris Davis.
Yeah, the
no,
Orioles,
no,
Chris
but
Davis.
Yeah, Orioles Chris Davis.
Oh.
Not KHRIS, but CHRIS.
Although he should have spelled it with a K because that's all he
I
did
mean-
after he signed his contract.
Dude, I still think the best the best meme I've ever sent Sean, I don't know if I've said it on this podcast or not before, but there was a guy that had Chris Davis on the side of a Baltimore bus. And the caption said, "We don't have to worry about this bus hitting anything."
I mean,
God, it was bad. He was like, what? Wasn't he like 0 for 50 something in that first part of the season? That last year,
Yeah, but
he played or something.
He
like
wasn't
that?
even putting the bat on the ball. It was like all strikeouts.
Yeah,
It was
all
like,
strikeouts.
holy dude.
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean-
the guy's career batting average is .233. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
He had 1 year where he was just lights out. Like he was so good, and then
And then they figured out like just don't throw him a fastball. He'll swing at everything else, and then he just never
Yeah.
saw a fastball again.
Yeah, so he hits 53 home runs and drives in 138 and 13. And then he comes back in 14 and hits 26 and 72. 15, he hits 47 and 117. And then 16, he's 38 and 84, and then it's 26, 16, 12, and 0. As his average continues to plummet by about 30 points a season, to the point where the last 3 seasons that he was in baseball, he didn't hit 200.
Yikes!
I mean, and that's only it's not like he could play defense to help the team. Like
I think I could accidentally hit 200 in a season.
Oh.
Like right now, I could step on a field and accidentally hit 200. Maybe. That's brutal. Wow.
I mean, that guy could not hit water if he fell out of a boat.
No.
That's a good one. Chris Davis is a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
was so hyped.
Yeah, I agree. So real quick, I'm just going to give you mine. Hold on. Mine personally, because I hate the DH, but David Ortiz was a bum with the Twins and then turned into a good hitter once he only had to play half the game of baseball. I mean,
ouch.
Yeah. I will say this about David Ortiz. Obviously, Red Sox fan, obviously love David Ortiz. David Ortiz would not be David Ortiz if he didn't come to a team that had Manny Ramirez. Manny taught him how to hit. Manny taught him how to prepare. Manny taught him how to watch film. Manny taught him all that. Like, so there's no, and I'm not taking anything away from David Ortiz.
No.
But if David Ortiz goes from the Twins to the Marlins to the Rangers to the,
he's not David Ortiz.
He's just a regular. He's just a name we've never heard of.
I agree.
Yeah, he came to Boston surrounded by Manny and Trot Nixon, and Kurt Schilling was here, and Pedro, and I mean, he came to a professional ball club that showed him what it took to be a professional.
Yeah. And there's no doubt in my mind that, I mean, obviously him and Manny, they knew each other. They were buddies. I mean, that was well chronicled. There's no doubt in my mind that Manny said, "You come here, I'll turn you into a better ball player." There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess to Morgan's point, like maybe David Ortiz, like Twins David Ortiz, yeah, stinks. Terrible.
Yeah.
But you team him up,
right.
you teach him.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's the greatest what if, right? I mean, that's what baseball is. What if? But yeah. My overrated players, I got 2, Harold Baines and Jim Rice. I think just any of those borderline Hall of Fame guys that are like getting in with that sympathy vote at the end don't belong in the Hall. Therefore,
I'll give you Jim Rice.
I think they're overrated. Listen, they're both nice players, but they're not Hall of Famers. So therefore, if they're in the Hall and I don't think they should be, then therefore they're overrated. That's how I viewed that. I don't think Harold Baines is a Hall of Famer. Jim Rice was not a Hall of Famer. I mean, I'm sure there's others in the Hall that I'd be like, meh. But I mean, those are just the two that pop into my brain. But yeah, what about you guys?
So, go ahead, Harrison.
My most overrated player of all time, and I still think he's a baseball god. But after I looked a little closer, I went, wow, that's not at all what I thought, is Nolan Ryan. And everybody talks about the no-hitters and blah, 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 and this, that, and the other thing. But when you actually look at Nolan Ryan's body of work, the guy never won a Cy Young. He won an ERA title twice. He was an 8-time All-Star in 27 seasons, won 1 World Series. But when you actually look at his stats, he never led the league in wins. He led the league in losses. He won 2 ERA titles. He led the league in walks 8 times. He led the league in wild pitches 6 times. He led the league in all these obscure things. And his overall body in his career, he's won 324 games. He's lost 292 games. So the guy is literally 32 games over 500 in his whole career with an ERA of 3.19. His postseason stats, he doesn't have any. He made 7 postseason starts. He's 2-2 with a 3.07 ERA. Aside from a whole bunch of no hitters, his average career season, he was a 14-13 pitcher that would strike a few guys out, walk a ton, and his career whip is almost 1.25. Like, when you break his numbers down, he was a pretty good pitcher that was a pretty good pitcher for a lot of friggin' years. But the body of work is really not that impressive.
But there's a reason why he had no hitters and not perfect games is because he couldn't hit the strike zone consistently.
Oh, he was basically Rick Vaughn. He was Rick Vaughn in real life.
Right. Effectively wild.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, when you lead the league in walks and wild pitches, in a third of your seasons as a major leaguer, it's because you can't find the strike zone. He threw gas, but he threw a ton of pitches, a lot of long outings, and his record, I mean, his typical seasons, he'd go 10-14, 14-12, 16-14, 16-12, 14-9, 12-11. Like he won 20 games twice. Like,
yeah, I mean, he just relied on guys to swing and miss. Like he did. That's
exactly.
what he relied on, just overpowering it.
He threw wicked hard, didn't always know where it was going, and did it for a long friggin' time.
Yeah.
But overall, statistically, he was really just a pretty good pitcher that just did it for a lot of years. Yeah. And longevity is what got him to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and 7 no-nos doesn't hurt, but
no, it doesn't hurt.
I agree with you. Sean, yours?
Yeah, no. So I looked at it almost initially kind of the same way you did Nick, about like, well, who's in the Hall of Fame that I think's like shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame? Because then that's one. But then I took it a little different and kind of put a little different thought process into it. I came up with 2 names. One, overrated in the sense of like the hype that came along with this guy was just completely overblown, and that was Yasiel Puig. This guy came up.
That's a great one.
He came up with like Jock Peterson, with Cody Bellinger, Corey Seager. Like came up with those guys. He was like Yasiel Puig this, Yasiel Puig that. He was the Latin American spark plug guy that would do anything and everything. He was like an average baseball player at best that when he got a hold of one could hit the ball a mile. But I mean, this guy, every time I turn on the highlights, he's getting thrown out at third base or second base. Like he was a dumb base runner. He was a below average, at least in my opinion. I don't think he was that great of a right fielder. He had a cannon for an arm, don't get me wrong, but talk about wild guys. I mean, that ball would end up in the third row half the time. Right?
Over the backstop, which is hard to do. It's netted.
Right, yeah. And I get that like, he played with his ball bag on fire, and that's great. Like, it's a great quality to have. But, like, he was a hothead. And, like, it flamed out in, like, 2 years. A year and a half, like 2 years later, he's in like Double-A ball. I don't even think he's in Major League Baseball anymore. I think he's in like Korea or somewhere.
Yeah.
But like the hype that came along with this guy, I mean, he was all over everywhere for like a year and a half. So that was one. And then the other one, Hideo Nomo. Did you guys ever look at Hideo Nomo's stats? Hideo Nomo, okay? Hideo Nomo came and took the States by storm when he came over from Japan, right? And rightfully so. Was it 1990? Pull it up here. 1995. Okay,
Yeah, 95
came up
with
with
the Dodgers.
That is his only All-Star appearance. His only one.
Yeah.
His only one. I remember when he came to Boston. He came to Boston in 2001, right?
Had the opening day no-hitter, and then
okay, that was the year. I didn't know if it was 01 or 2000. Okay, well, it was his only year.
It was 01.
So yeah, 2001. This guy comes over, and I remember I was 11 years old, 2001. I remember Hideo Nomo, this guy, big market, blah, blah, blah. His career numbers, okay? This guy pitched 12 years. He won 123 games. He lost 109. His career ERA is 4.24. He's got 323 starts. He's got 1,918 strikeouts, which is, not necessarily something to sneeze at, obviously. 908 walks. This guy, I mean, not quite Nolan Ryan, but good Lord.
Good Lord, man.
That's bad.
Hideo Nomo was not good. He was not good, fellas. He was not good.
You want to hear something even better?
Yeah.
In where did it go? In Hideo Nomo's career, in the postseason, there there it is. Oh no, where did it go? I just had it. Hideo Nomo in the postseason is postseason pitching. He is 0-2 with a 10.38 ERA.
It's not bad.
Really getting it done.
Yeah. 8.2 innings pitched, 12 hits, 10 earned runs. Good
Horrendous.
Lord.
Horrendous.
And a whip of 2.2. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so Hideo Nomo, boys. He's not good.
No.
He's not good.
Well, yeah, that was a fun segment. Thanks, guys, for all those inputs. Those are all great ones. But, yeah, we're going to move on now to heading home, where we got some topics we're going to talk about. Sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice. I went to NC State women's game the other day against Louisville, number 4 versus number 3. I still don't have my voice back. But
how did we do?
Oh, NC State won, man. It was sick. We were down by 14 in the 4th and came back and won.
Let's go.
They're killing everybody right now.
Go Wolfpack.
They're so good. Yeah. Anyways, so we're going to talk about a couple things here. There was a report today that the MLB denied the Tampa Bay Rays for their split home games. So they were thinking about splitting their home games between Montreal and Tampa, and MLB said, not happening. They don't want the fans to be to just go to the game and not be behind a team either. What does that make sense? Am I explaining that correctly?
They want the local support. They want the fans to care about the team.
Exactly. So they don't want them to bounce back and forth and not build that loyalty.
Then they should never let them play in Tampa again, for the record.
Right.
I agree. So that's the thing is now the report said that they're going to move them to somewhere in Florida, possibly. Where that is, whether it's downtown Tampa, that said that there's no place in downtown Tampa to put them. There's no room. That's why they're in St. Pete. So I think they're going to be done in Tampa in a couple of years, and they're going to have to move somewhere else.
When I saw that come out the other day, I was doing a little research, and what I learned that I found interesting was that both Orlando and Jacksonville have made a play to try to bring a major league team there because they've got such a heavy kind of tourist crowd. So you think of Orlando, everybody goes to Orlando for, Disney World and Universal and SeaWorld, and it's the convention center of the world. Why wouldn't you have a professional sports franchise right in Orlando? Especially baseball. Well, I mean, you got the Magic, that's it though. You got nothing else. Why not? Now you got winter covered with the Magic, you could have summer covered with the with a baseball team, and they insist that in Orlando they've got plenty of room to find a home for them right in that greater Orlando area. So Orlando's been on the radar, I guess, for a franchise for a lot of years, which would make sense to move them an hour up the highway, or Jacksonville. But I think that the history of the Jaguars is going to make MLB question if Jacksonville will really get behind a franchise, because it's been a rough go up there. Granted, the owner's done nothing to help, but
bring them to Raleigh. That's what I want. Bring them to Raleigh. Let's go.
Stacy, yeah. No one in Tampa cares. The sad part is nothing. They don't just care now. They've never cared ever.
Yeah.
Like except for 2008, nobody's cared about that team.
Bro, so 2008, you could walk up the day of a World Series game and get a ticket. Even in 2008, that was insane.
Yeah, and that was the best draw they've ever had was that season. Even when they've gone back since, nobody's cared.
Right. So I'm half joking about bringing them to Raleigh, but no joke. Like there's no team around here. You got the Nationals, Orioles, or the Braves. Those are the three closest to here. And you should see the Hurricanes fan base here, dude. They are nuts. Like they love their Carolina Hurricanes.
Yep.
And rightfully so. They're nasty. But like this fan base down here, the people down here, I think would absolutely love to have a professional baseball team here. They have the Panthers, but we're losing those guys to South Carolina, and they're out in Charlotte anyway, so they're not even in the Raleigh area. But they would love a team here. But I think they're going to stay in Florida. I think they're going to go. Orlando's a great choice. It's going to be Jacksonville or Orlando. I think you're right on that.
Yeah, but I could see a team eventually ending up in a place like Charlotte. I always thought Nashville would be a great place because you got great proximity to a lot of other places. Birmingham, Alabama is another really big area that could probably support a team, but it's probably too close to Atlanta. I've heard Memphis, Tennessee. I've heard there's lots of these areas that could support teams that don't have anything. It's amazing some of these markets that just don't have a lot of options.
Yeah.
Then you got Tampa when nobody cares.
Yeah, it's crazy. So we're going to touch base on the lockout real quick before we end here. They met today. There was no real progress. They are going to meet tomorrow, which is kind of huge. I mean, they've never met 2 days in a row. This is the first time they are meeting 2 days in a row. The players did draw. What did they drop, Harrison?
So the players dropped the 5-year free agency thing. Basically said, okay, we'll do away with that. 6 years is fine. They also dropped the request on the revenue sharing from $100 million to $30 million. So they dropped the request by 70%. They have not budged on the league minimum salary. They want that to go from $570 to $775, which I think the owners will probably just accept that because, even if you've got 5 guys in the roster, they get a $100,000 or $200,000 raise. It really isn't going to impact their payroll that much. Especially if you can keep the 6-year thing where you keep guys there longer.
Yeah, hot dogs will just go up another 50 cents.
Right, exactly. They can make up that gap.
Yeah.
And plus, I think the owners would be happy to pay guys $775 for 6 seasons versus $650 for 5. So, but the players immediately gave up on the free agency shortening. They immediately gave 70% of their request on the revenue sharing back, which makes me believe the players are looking at the calendar, realizing that they're about a month away from missing paychecks, and thinking it's time to get back to baseball. So I think that's a good sign that the players not only came with their proposal, but made some aggressive revisions to their requests right out of the gate.
Yeah, and it's about time that the Players Association did something. Like we said last week, like the league would come to them and be like, "Hey, let's go here," and they'd just be like, "No." Well, how about here? No. Okay, what do you want? I don't know. Like it's about time they had some movement, and with tomorrow, hopefully, it's a lot bigger movement. So.
Yep.
Also, speaking about tomorrow, the Hall of Fame ballot is going to be released. The results are going to be released. Right now, it looks like David Ortiz might be the sole person on this list, which I think is absolutely crazy. Like we've been talking about the steroid guys, it's the last year for a lot of them. It's just an absolute joke and travesty that these guys are not going to be put in. It's it's sad, really. And these writers are just, they got to fix the process somehow. I don't know how you fix it. Don't get me wrong, but the writers can't be the ones making these decisions because it's all personal vendettas. It's like we've talked about before. And like, it's not about what they did on the field. It's about how they treated me as a person. And I'm butthurt that, Kurt Schilling told me to screw off in an interview. Like, it shouldn't matter. Right. But
no, I agree 100%. I mean,
Yeah,
we haven't been shy about that on here before.
no.
I agree. I think it's total bullshit.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they set it up this way, where you give it to these writers, because there are so many guys that, Schilling's a great example, who, maybe they've done some stupid stuff, maybe they've said some stupid things, maybe the media doesn't like them. But these guys aren't judging them based on how they perform. They're judging them based on how they treated them as writers and if they like them or not. And it's a kind of a stupid popularity contest versus a real judge of performance and, what these guys meant to the game. So too much power in the hands of writers that really don't deserve it.
And I can't even remember who it was, but like, they just used it as a joke. They like checked off Jeff Kent and nobody else. Like, you're telling me that Jeff Kent is the only person on this ballot you think deserves a Hall of Fame vote?
Yeah.
Like, get off it, dude. Like, immediately take his credentials. Like, I don't want him writing in a paper anymore. I don't want to hear about his baseball opinion anymore. I mean, I'm sure you guys don't really care about my baseball opinion, but I'm not paid for it. That's the difference. Like,
yeah, it's a joke.
He's using this as a complete joke. Like, to just check one name off and hand it in. Like, dude, screw off. Like, that's ridiculous. I can't. It makes me so upset, as you can clearly tell. I just don't get it. I really don't. Like, they're almost making a mockery out of the whole thing. And it shouldn't be. But yeah.
Agreed.
Well, well, that will do it for tonight. I'll end on a heated note, but thanks for watching and chiming in, guys. It was another great episode. So please like, share, and subscribe, and keep interacting with us on the page. Post stories that you find and give us topics to talk about, and we'll gladly bring them up in shows and talk about them. And and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, thanks.